This is the Plenus, and it's tiny.
The weenus.
No, not the Weenus, the Plenus. This is a mono subwoofer amp. You might even call it a micro amp.
Oh, that weenus.
So does this little Plenus pack a big punch? Keep watching, it might surprise you. I have no idea how to pronounce the name of this thing. Is that Plenus? Is it Plenus? Whoever names these things needs to start doing focus groups so they can come up with better names. Anyway, inside the box, you're going to find the amp, a bass knob, a manual, and a plug for high-level inputs. The amp itself is really small. It's a whopping 1.16 pounds, and the footprint is about the size of a cell phone. It's less than 2 inches thick. If you need something to hide away in a small space, this might be the amplifier for you. Looking at the connections, the power, ground, remote, and speaker connections all use the exact same size Allen head screws, which is a good thing. You don't need to fumble around for a bunch of different Allen keys when you're trying to hook up your amp. But there's a downside. It's really easy to hook it up wrong, so make sure you're paying close attention to the labels. On the other side, you will find the inputs, a gain control, and 2 crossovers, a high pass filter and a low pass filter. That low pass lets the bass through. That's your subwoofer crossover, and that high pass keeps the bass out. Why do you need both? We typically call this type of crossover a subsonic filter. That is a misnomer. It's an infrasonic filter. It's designed to keep out frequencies that are too low for you to hear so that you don't damage a subwoofer that's in a ported enclosure. What's weird, both of these are adjustable up to 20,000 hertz. That makes no sense to me for a mono amplifier. I guess you could use a bunch of these for your mids and highs. Let's see what kind of power it makes. In this test, we're watching for this light right here. When it lights up, we hit 1% total harmonic distortion. That happens at 169 watts, which is nowhere near the 300 watts claimed by the manufacturer. Typically, the next step is to turn it up until it clips. I wasn't able to get it clipped. That is a side effect of my test setup. It's not a reflection of the quality of the amplifier. More on that in just a bit. But the thing to remember is we are far short of the 4 ohm power rating.
I'm looking at the weenus and I'm not happy.
I'm not happy either, but this is a very budget-friendly amp, so what do you expect? Let's give 2 ohms a try. Again, nowhere near the rated power, 272 watts at 1% THD. And again, I wasn't able to get it clipped. We topped out at 295 watts. That's a long way from the 450 watt power. It's not rated for 1 ohm, but I'm going to try it and see what happens. Hopefully the Plenus will survive.
I wouldn't want to do anything to hurt your weenus.
Williston Audio Labs did test this amp a couple of months back. And this right here is an example of why we need more than one person testing amplifiers. There's always variance in the manufacturing, which means there's always the possibility of getting different results. So the distortion light comes on right at 346 watts, which is still a long way from that 2 ohm power rating. And when we crank it up further, we see that we get up to 361 watts and we pop the fuse. So let's replace the fuse. The problem is I don't see a fuse. The fuse on this thing is internal. I wasn't planning on taking it apart, but now I have to. The fuse didn't pop when Williston Audio Labs tested it at 1 ohm, and here it did. I'm not going to recommend that you try it at 1 ohm. Check out this fuse. It's an odd size and an odd color. This is a 35 amp mini ATC fuse. It's a good thing that Plenus threw an extra one in the box because I definitely do not have one of these in my fuse stash. Here is where the Plenus surprised me. I've got it hooked back up, and this time I've got it connected to a pair of 8-inch subwoofers. I'll be sure to give you a link to these down in the video description. I cranked it all the way up and got 458 watts with no distortion and no clipping. Once again, that clean signal you're seeing there, that lack of clipping, is due entirely to my test setup. I'm using an old cell phone as my signal source, and the output voltage through the USB-C port just isn't enough to drive this amp into clipping. That means I'm leaving some power on the table. Just for kicks and giggles, let's switch to real-time power mode and see how much output we can get while listening to music. The biggest number I saw on the amp dyno was 392 watts. Overall, it's not a bad amp. The 3 main things that it has going for it are the size, the features like the bass knob and the infrasonic filter, and it is budget friendly. But it did not make its rated power, and the internal fuse is just a little bit inconvenient. But if you only need 300 watts at 2 ohms, you need something compact, this amp will be hard to beat. To check out some more budget-friendly amplifiers, click on this playlist right here. Before I go, I need to say thank you to all of my patrons with a big bonus shout out to the $25 and up patrons: Timothy, Mark, Paul, David, JD America, Bo, Dylan, and Jonathan. I'm Justin. This is the DIY Audio Guy YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next adventure.